Conversation around greatness can have nothing to do with the conversation around being a cultural phenomenon. And now, there is no debate that Caitlin Clark has become exactly that. Think about it. The Nike historic shoe deal she just signed, she signed because companies like to make money. And they know they will make money. Because when Caitlin Clark walks into a coffee shop in the middle of nowhere, people recognize her. Because when you are on Saturday Night Live and every news and entertainment network along the way, not just sports networks, you've risen above the conversation about your play and you've become a cultural phenomenon.
To get your hands on the Caitlin Clark version of Nike's Kobe Bryant sneaker, you're out of luck. They are out of stock.
Just made $28 million with Nike. She's getting a signature shoe. Unfortunately, she is still left to deal with all of the critics.
Most were unprepared for this conversation. Honestly, I debated skipping it entirely. I tried to stay silent, let the controversy die, let the algorithm bury the noise. Then Nike made a move that changed everything. Instantly, the media reverted to their typical narrative games. Vital info started vanishing from the feed. That is when I realized this fire was not going out. Someone needed to dive into the fire and ask the hard questions. Since ESPN is playing it safe and major networks lost their edge, the burden falls on me. No filters, no corporate fluff, just the raw truth. This entire drama boils down to a pair of cardboard boxes. Two boxes, two completely separate universes. The first looks like a masterpiece. Immaculate edges, shimmering gold tag, glowing under spotlights inside Nike's inner sanctum. That label screams CC1 sample. It represents the inaugural signature line for Caitlin Clark. A project they have been forging in secret for over a year while everyone else was looking elsewhere. Contrast that with the second box. This one feels like a tragedy. Battered, bruised, and covered in a thick layer of neglect. Peeling adhesive barely holding the A1 tag. It is a relic of a forgotten era, cast aside without fanfare. No hype, no questions, just silence until shoe enthusiasts on Twitter dug up the files and forced a confrontation. This release will be a behemoth. We are looking at the most significant sneaker debut in Nike's modern history. It rivals the LeBron era and might even challenge the legendary Jordan legacy itself. When we talk revenue, we are entering uncharted territory. Hearing Caitlin describe the technical breakthroughs, it is clear this isn't just a shoe, it's a massive leap forward. Here is the reality check most people are missing. One of these sneakers is destined for greatness. The other is spiraling toward the discount bin or a donation box, and it has nothing to do with the quality of the foam or the mesh. This divide comes from a lesson Nike learned through failure. It is a shift the league is struggling to grasp. A total pivot in how women's sports are sold to the masses. Imagine a silent dressing room, no cameras, just a lone athlete staring at a glowing screen. The screen shows Jason Tatum rocking the Caitlin Clark Kobe edition. Then Anthony Edwards pops up in them. LeBron follows suit, tagging a flame icon next to that iconic logo. Luka and Ja join the wave. Every cultural heavyweight in the NBA is endorsing a rookie's brand. They are fueling a new legend. In that moment, the athlete's phone slips, shattering against the cold floor. Stop and soak that in. What if the most influential shoe in the game was not even an official product yet? What if the tectonic shift occurred before a single contract was inked or a commercial filmed? Long before the lawyers signed off, what if a simple viral image set the entire industry on fire? Stay focused, because the financial data is about to hit like a ton of bricks. Once you pull back the curtain on the profit margins and the behind-the-scenes power plays, everything changes. When the ego, the friction, and the hidden jealousies finally come to light, your perspective on the WNBA will transform. Your view of Nike and the concept of a sports legacy will never be the same. This launch will act like a nuclear blast in terms of market dominance and total sales. It will be a cultural explosion, with every major celebrity and pro athlete demanding a pair for the hardwood. We have already witnessed her Kobe colorways dominating pro courts everywhere. This is merely the opening act. When Caitlin's actual signature drops, the impact will be seismic. Do not look away now. This is where the mask slips. To understand the future, you have to look at where these two icons began. Without the backstory, you cannot grasp why one is soaring while the other is losing her grip. Aja Wilson, 6'4", South Carolina. She was engineered for the spotlight, winning it all in 2017. As the top pick for the Las Vegas Aces, she fulfilled her destiny immediately by dominating the competition. Multiple MVP titles, 2 gold medals, and a championship ring to prove her worth. She owns every accolade in the book. Records shattered wherever she stepped, her reputation preceding her every move. When she entered the building, the cheers were deafening and completely undisputed. For half a decade, she stood alone as the undisputed queen of the hardwood. Aja Wilson stands as the league's reigning queen, yet she is the elite titan that the public constantly overlooks. That isn't some controversial opinion. It is the cold, hard truth. Her track record remains flawless and beyond reproach. We are talking championship banners, individual trophies, Olympic glory, and a dominance that shifts the entire court's gravity. You simply cannot dispute statistics of that magnitude. She shouldered the burden of entire franchises, redefined excellence, and essentially became the blueprint for greatness. Yet, a certain uncomfortable narrative exists that most folks prefer to sidestep. Once you establish the gold standard, every newcomer gets weighed against your shadow. Transitioning from the hunter to the benchmark is a pivot not everyone navigates gracefully. Inevitably, a challenger emerges with aspirations to push the ceiling even higher. That is precisely when Caitlin Clark stormed into the frame. This 6-foot sniper from Iowa possesses a firing range that defies logic even on slowed-down footage. The moment she stepped onto the collegiate hardwood, the history books began to warp. Long-standing milestones did not merely crumble. They vanished entirely. She eclipsed the all-time collegiate scoring peak for both men and women, systematically dismantling distance shooting records like it was a routine chore. Her playmaking vision forced analysts to scour ancient archives just to find a worthy peer. Back-to-back appearances in the national championship games solidified her legend. Stadiums swelled to capacity wherever her bus parked. In Iowa, finding an empty seat was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Away venues felt like home turf because crowds flooded in just to witness her practice routine. This phenomenon transcended simple box scores, though. It was her swagger, that icy composure while launching from the logo, and the sheer audacity of challenging every defender to stop the inevitable. There is a legitimate case to be made that Caitlin Clark has evolved into the Taylor Swift of the athletic world. She is an unmistakable icon in every endeavor, single-handedly pulling an entirely fresh demographic into her orbit. She is bridging gaps, drawing in men and women who previously ignored the court entirely. The sheer magnetism she generates dwarfs the actual competition taking place. While the pundits bicker over her professional trajectory and what the future might hold, this massive endorsement contract serves as a loud reminder: certain individuals grow larger than the sport they actually play. Clark has managed to reach that stratosphere before even hitting her prime. She possesses that unteachable spark, the magnetic allure. Elderly folks in the heartland who never knew a layup from a free throw were suddenly sporting her jersey. Youngsters on suburban driveways spent hours perfecting her signature step back, desperate to replicate her specific brand of magic. This was not just manufactured noise. It was a tidal wave of genuine cultural momentum. Then, the 2024 professional draft arrived. Going first overall to Indiana, she started shattering benchmarks before she had even logged a single second of professional play. Television ratings skyrocketed, ticket demand reached a fever pitch, and merchandise sales went vertical instantly. Her digital footprint was massive, making the entire league feel more urgent and high stakes. But in that shadow, a certain friction began to fester. As the Clark hype train gained speed, Aja Wilson stood her ground in Las Vegas, observing the frenzy. With a trophy case full of championships and 2 most valuable player awards, her legacy as the alpha was already written in stone. Yet, every digital screen and broadcast cycle hummed with a singular repetitive melody. It was constant reels, non-stop interviews, and endless debates centered solely on Clark. Naturally, the atmosphere began to sour. The change manifested in the subtle hesitations, the guarded posture, and the heavy silences during media scrums. Her remarks appeared diplomatic on the surface, yet they carried a jagged undertone, faint smirks and dismissive glances suggesting the rookie had not paid her dues. It was not an explosion, just a sharp enough edge to signal her awareness that the cameras had pivoted elsewhere. Not everyone was thrilled about where that focus finally settled. Initially, the resentment was just a low-frequency hum. Soon, the subtlety evaporated. The very identity of the league was being rewritten, and the established stars were not fans of the new plot. To be honest, it is a bit of a double-edged sword. I mean, when the conversation turns to the all-time greats of this league, I need to be a lock for that top 3 spot. That is the ultimate vision. When people picture the pinnacle of this sport, I want my image to be the first thing that flashes. I want my signature stamped all over the game's legacy. Say it louder for the back, Aja. She is willing to do whatever is necessary, racking up rings and individual hardware to cement that elite status. Achieving that level of recognition is the only way I can find peace at the end of the day. Tensions peaked when Nike handed both of them identical contract terms and the exact same pathway toward a signature sneaker launch. Technically, they were on level ground, but their responses were worlds apart. To one, it was a golden door to immortality. To the other, it felt like a territory that required defending or even a total structural overhaul. So, the collision course is locked in. Two icons racing toward the same sun, one ascending the mountain, the other already sitting on the throne. Nike is doing what they do best, playing both sides of the fence, despite failing to foresee the storm they have stirred up. Let's be honest, Caitlin Clark's latest promotional campaign is shaping up to be a legendary digital phenomenon that we haven't witnessed in years. Just glance at Nike's social engagement metrics for a moment to see the scale of this. That specific Instagram upload pulled in 30 million views, a number that is frankly astronomical and totally unprecedented. It is wild to see that level of traction from a powerhouse like Nike, considering they never make moves based on sentiment alone. Their strategy is driven by cold, hard data, market dominance, and whatever ensures that iconic logo stays ahead of the competition. Everything seemed business as usual until a single, leaked image blew the lid off the entire operation. Within the NBA, there is a meticulous subculture of sneaker historians who track every single pair of shoes that hits the hardwood. They document every colorway and model worn during every game, leaving no detail unrecorded throughout the season. It used to be a niche world of spreadsheets and stats, ignored by the mainstream until someone dropped a week's worth of data. That changed when a breakdown of the numbers hit the timeline and immediately went viral. Over 7 days and 14 matchups, 42 professional athletes were spotted wearing the exact same footwear. They were all rocking Clark's specific Kobe 5 collaboration, and once that trend surfaced, it became impossible for the public to ignore. Statistics like those do not happen by chance. This was not a case of Nike forcing gear onto their roster. This was a deliberate preference from the players, choosing a newcomer's design over every other high-end alternative without a second thought. Then came the devastating side-by-side comparison. How many players represented A'ja Wilson's signature line during that same window? Exactly one. That single statistic did more than just circulate it, completely reframed the entire industry narrative. Bam Adebayo was the lone representative, and even then, most of the sneaker world couldn't identify what he was wearing. Fans were zooming in on screenshots, questioning if it was actually a signature shoe or just a generic pair he grabbed from the locker room. A simple screenshot transformed into a cold receipt that sparked absolute pandemonium across the league. Just like that, the entire sports fashion timeline was set ablaze. If you were hoping to snag the Caitlin Clark version of Nike's custom Kobe kicks, you are completely out of luck because they vanished. The WNBA standout collaborated on a striking Indiana Fever colorway of the Kobe 5 Protro that you can see right now. Sales went live at 10 in the morning on Monday, and by 11, every single pair had been swept off the shelves. Social media went into a full-blown frenzy, with opinions and quote tweets piling up faster than anyone could track. The digital backlash was swift and brutal, questioning why a two-time MVP was being overshadowed by a freshman on the court. People wondered how Nike could miscalculate so badly, letting the rookie take the crown while the veteran stayed in the background. A tidal wave of memes began to flood every platform, featuring side-by-side graphics of the startling statistics. Seeing 42 versus 1 displayed in high-definition graphics felt like watching a market crash in real time. The truth that the media tried to gloss over to keep things professional was that these weren't just benchwarmers wearing her shoes. We are talking about franchise icons and all-stars making a conscious decision to represent a WNBA athlete's aesthetic on their own. That breaks every traditional rule of sports marketing, where the NBA usually dictates the flow of influence. Clark essentially flipped the script, securing organic support from the men's league without any corporate pressure behind it. She even earned a public nod from LeBron and a series of fire emojis from Kevin Durant on his official story. In contrast, Wilson had one lone supporter in Bam, making the disparity painfully obvious to everyone watching the numbers. A'ja was witness to every bit of it, the jokes and the comparisons hitting her feed like a live wire. It serves as a grim reminder of a cardinal rule of the digital age. Never use your platform when you are feeling vulnerable. Avoid posting when the adrenaline is high, or when you are feeling the heat of a public controversy. Once you press send while the sting is fresh, there is no taking it back from an unforgiving and permanent internet. The digital world does not let things go. It archives every reaction to be used against you down the road. That is exactly the kind of evidence the internet hoards, and Wilson seemed to ignore that danger during the initial fallout. Around 11 at night, a cryptic and brief message appeared. It was a delayed reaction that didn't exactly clear the air. It could have been interpreted as being about her training or personal life, so the alarm bells hadn't started ringing yet. However, a follow-up post about Real recognizing Real quickly changed the tone of the entire conversation. The atmosphere grew tense as fans began reading between the lines of her increasingly pointed social media messages. Then the final blow landed, and this particular update carried a much more aggressive and heavy weight. Why bother seeking approval once you've already secured the crown? Especially from critics who can't even get your name right. Social media absolutely detonated right then because there was zero subtlety involved. It wasn't some abstract thought. It was a direct assault with no room for doubt. This was a back-to-back MVP, launching a heat-seeking missile at a freshman who was owning the sneaker market and pulling focus away from her. And the fire didn't stop there. Later that night, she hopped on a live stream from the comfort of her own home. With candles glowing and a steady gaze fixed on the lens, she shared her heart for over 30 minutes. The audience stayed glued, recording every second until the bomb finally dropped. Race is a factor. Let's stop pretending it isn't. She spoke candidly about missed doors and the lack of mainstream exposure for certain players. It was about how some athletes are fast-tracked while others are sidelined, the frustration of being elite for years while feeling ignored, and the reality of not fitting a specific aesthetic. To be clear, none of this is happening in a vacuum. So, why exactly is there so much backlash? The truth is, it's because Caitlin Clark is white. A writer for USA Today named Mike Freeman even went public with a post about it. Not a single black WNBA star has their own signature shoe line. Jameli Hill, who often focuses on racial dynamics, argued that Caitlin Clark hadn't earned that massive sneaker deal. It is fairly obvious why the brand chose Caitlin Clark to lead their new signature line. Nike isn't in the business of handing out signature deals to just anyone, regardless of what their skin color happens to be. This isn't just a black and white debate. It's about the market. Brand bias is a reality, and history is filled with proof. Sports aren't shielded from the real world, and America certainly isn't. But this is exactly where things get incredibly high stakes. When you play that card, your foundation needs to be bulletproof. Your timing, the context, and your facts better be flawless. If the ground you're standing on is shaky, the recoil will hit you hard. Right then, her footing slipped. Brands that were quietly discussing deals suddenly went dark. Phone calls were left unreturned. Behind the scenes, PR experts were in full-blown panic mode. Emergency strategy sessions were held while the silence from Nike's marketing department spoke volumes. Once a firestorm like that is unleashed into the atmosphere, it doesn't just burn the target, it spreads. If you aren't positioned perfectly, you'll get caught in the blaze too. Every follow-up post she made only deepened the crisis. Each new message felt more desperate. Her hashtag started sounding like a plea for help rather than a show of strength. Every attempt at a comeback or rebuttal was instantly buried under a mountain of negative replies and brutal ratios. The harder she tried to fight her way out, the faster she spiraled. It became a trap of quicksand where every struggle only pulled her deeper. As black women, Paige reminds me of that mindset. It's not really about her personal glory. She fully recognizes how her own privilege paved the way for her success. Obviously, she is a beast on the court, but her awareness of that advantage is what really gives her an edge. Honestly, she mirrors your approach in many ways, and I definitely mean that as a high compliment. Wait, is that actually a compliment? Is being told she understands her white privilege considered a praiseworthy trait? Then the Nike quarterly earnings report was released, and it carried massive weight. At that point, the mainstream press couldn't dance around the subject any longer. For weeks, the media coverage had been incredibly soft, framing everything as a simple, friendly rivalry. They used safe terms like rising tension between stars, corporate-friendly language meant to keep sponsors happy without rocking the boat. But once Nike's financial call explicitly linked the Clark Kobe 5 edition to a massive spike in basketball revenue, once her name was being dropped to major investors and the stock price reacted to her shoe sales, pretending the hype wasn't real became impossible. Major cable networks immediately shifted into high-intensity debate mode. You had split screens with talking heads shouting over each other, while a neutral moderator watched the chaos unfold. For the first time in the history of the league, those panels actually became incredibly heated and personal. One side claimed Wilson botched the conversation on race and lost public trust because of her delivery. The opposition fought back, saying you can't ignore lived experiences just because they make people uncomfortable. No one was denying the history of bias. But the cold, hard numbers were right there in front of everyone. Sales figures, market reach, and pure commercial visibility were undeniable. The debate kept ping-ponging between raw reality and personal perception, leaving the entire audience split right down the middle. Social media polls were locked at 50-50, and comment sections were transformed into digital battlefields. Every single post was flooded with intense arguments, receipts, and counterpoints, with no middle ground in sight. There were no calm opinions left, just two sides dug in, each certain the other was missing the point. By then, the tension had left the internet. Even family group chats got awkward, and fantasy sports threads turned toxic in the blink of an eye. Simple hoops chatter mutated into absolute warfare. Out of sight, the Wilson team hit the panic button. Phones buzzed, schedules vanished, and an emergency digital summit with Nike's top brass in Beaverton materialized. Representatives joined, PR raced to catch up, and legal counsel stood guard. They were all desperate to stop the hemorrhaging. Desperately spinning the story, they fought to rescue a public relations disaster from the brink of total collapse. Amidst that chaotic storm, Caitlin Clark chose a different path entirely. She opted for pure silence. Not a single post, interview, or cryptic message surfaced. She was a complete ghost on the timeline. The public only witnessed highlight reels and humble fan appreciations. She remained grounded in the gym while opponents drowned in media cycles. That stark difference became the headline. Observers really started to pick up on the vibe. Pundits analyzed it. Broadcasters focused on it. Even retired legends now on air weighed the two conflicting strategies. Serenity against bedlam. Discipline versus knee-jerk responses. Fair or not, the media machine was processing this live. Wilson's freefall stood in sharp relief against Clark's stoic grind. The visuals were brutal. Suddenly, the financial stats arrived. Aftermarket figures for Clark's Kobe shoes surged past 300%. Those $190 sneakers are hitting resale platforms for nearly twice their original sticker price. Sneakers originally costing $220 sold for $6,700 without hesitation. Massive queues formed for upcoming editions that hadn't even hit the shelves yet. Retail workers at major shops muttered about stock being more guarded than new gaming consoles. Subtlety was gone. Reality set in. That energy was undeniable and accelerating quickly. By that stage, consumer interest had already shifted elsewhere. Wilson's branded gear crashed below original retail everywhere. Every site showed a steady decline in valuation. Offers gathered dust. Secondary market values plummeted with every passing hour. Consumer rejection spoke louder than any news article possibly could. Technical details no longer fueled the conversation. The narrative migrated to a deeper level. It bypassed specs to focus on character and brand loyalty. It became about which star fans trusted enough to invest their hard-earned cash and precious energy into. Shoppers voted with their wallets without needing an official statement. Such cultural eruptions never happen in a vacuum. Tension had been mounting for ages. Controversy and clashing opinions piled up until the dam finally burst. Then came the turning point. The New Heights podcast took center stage. Hosted by the Kels brothers, it's a juggernaut free from corporate filters, offering unvarnished talk to a massive fan base. Then, Caitlin Clark makes her entrance. This marked her debut in an unscripted space since the footwear drama dominated social media. A statement was inevitable. Her approach remained a mystery. The episode kicked off typically, full of banter and relaxed vibes. Suddenly, viewership figures skyrocketed. Thousands tuned in before her first word. The audience grew as the dialogue matured. When she finally spoke, she was steady and unfiltered, ditching the typical public relations script. Zero scripted dodging and no insults. She simply detailed the journey of creating her signature shoe, the CC1. She shared her priorities and the logic behind her design decisions, avoiding any conflict or blame. This transparent style surpassed any official press release. Listeners decided for themselves, and by the end, the tide had turned completely. She dismantled the narrative with total nonchalance. She noted development began 18 months ago, immediately following the conclusion of her second college year. Nike executives visited Iowa City with their standard marketing decks, but she rejected their initial ideas immediately. She refused any slapped-on branding or cookie-cutter designs. She wasn't looking for an easy, generic deal. Her branding required a total ground-up build. Jason leaned in, repeating her words to confirm he hadn't misheard. Starting from scratch. She described the complexity, high-tech laboratories and specialized cushioning materials. These were Nike innovations. Countless midsole prototypes were put to the test and ultimately rejected. She destroyed prototypes during training, then shipped them back to the lab with her own scribbled notes. Engineers overhauled the support structures repeatedly due to her exacting standards for stability and security. Chuckling, she confessed to being a demanding partner. It took 18 months of constant tweaks and vetoes. Travis teased her about Nike surrendering creative power to a student. She just shrugged, saying they adapted quickly. If her brand was going on it, the quality had to be elite, because a reputation is permanent once it is carved in stone. She leans into the concept of bloodline and inherited glory, fearing her descendants might see her linked to some rushed, mediocre project just to grab a quick payday. Suddenly, she reaches down and produces a hidden gem. It is no store shelf item or press sample, but a raw, living prototype. Ink scribbles cover the soles, field notes are etched into the fabric, and the rubber is scarred from real friction, the unpolished truth, pure evidence of the grind. Not some glossy ad, but a relic born from the laboratory of sweat. She drops that beast on the wood like it is a pack of gum, zero theatrics. Instantly, the atmosphere turns heavy and the digital feed enters a total tailspin. Flames flood the screen, jaws hit the floor, and shouting in all caps becomes the only language left. Jason grabs the footwear, inspecting every angle before suggesting something absolutely mental. Before a soul can object, a blade flashes in his hand. A legend of the gridiron, a future Hall of Fame titan, slicing open a masterpiece on a live stream without blinking once. They rip the guts out, dissecting the internal anatomy piece by piece. Secrets of the padding are bared, every millimeter of foam is scrutinized, and that carbon spine is laid bare like a pro sports breakdown. It is two heavy hitters from the turf, absolutely geeking out over the architecture of a hardwood weapon. Travis is visibly stunned, preaching about the magic that unfolds when the player finally holds the steering wheel. No mindless corporate surveys or canned options here, just raw authority and a deep personal stake in the craft. This transcends a simple logo. It is a takeover. Then she drops a bombshell that leaves the world speechless. Nike gave the green light a week prior. We are talking a budget exceeding 9 figures and a prime slot during the big game. With Travis Kelce making an appearance and Travis Scott curating the rhythm, they launched a global invasion across over 40 nations. There was no quiet testing or playing it safe. They did not treat this like some boutique specialty item. This was a total assault on the hoop world, period. Jason puts the remains aside and finally hits her with the heavy question. Does the loud chatter and the storm of critics ever get under her skin? All that chaos vibrating around her very existence? She stops, exhales, and navigates her response with surgical precision, admitting she cannot leash the public tongue or dance for the clickbait gods. The only territory she rules is the sweat equity she pours into her legacy. She boils it down to the basics. Her focus remains locked on her performance and the integrity of the banner she flies. When some teenager scrapes together their savings for months to secure the CC1, she wants that investment to feel monumental. She wants them to know the soul behind the symbol actually gave a damn, ignoring the vanity of social trends. Crafting something for the heat of the game rather than the noise of the web. Somewhere out there, the tide completely turned. The arrogance in the comments evaporated. The urge to fire back died because there is no debating cold, hard reality. You cannot reduce a 9-figure rollout and a Super Bowl slot to a simple internet joke. Snarky posts cannot compete with a worldwide movement backed by tangent-level resources. You cannot out-troll 18 months of grueling science and a raw, authentic autopsy of a shoe on live television. And the victim card fails when the opponent is not even fighting, they are just outworking you in total silence. Success just happens to be louder. Data lacks emotion, and markets ignore the bickering of egos, which is when the web finally broke. The CC1 movement rocketed to the pinnacle of global trends. Not just in hoops or movies, but #1 across the board. Political rants and celebrity gossip were wiped off the map. That top spot stayed locked for over 24 hours. By then, the argument was over. It had transformed into a cultural landmark, and landmarks do not ask for permission. For a whole day and night, a freshman sneaker dominated the world's tongue. Not merely in the locker rooms or the collector shops, but in every corner of the earth. Then the king himself uploads 3 flame icons and a golden crown. He says the new guard is built different, and that was that. When he speaks, the world stands at attention. Instantly, the shops went into a state of total lockdown. Staff members leaked footage of boxes being hauled into high-security vaults like they were bars of solid gold. Upper management fired off memos demanding maximum protection and strict battle plans for the release. When the digital floodgates opened, the entire inventory evaporated in 4 minutes, shattering records set by the greatest legends. While the world went into a fever dream and the feeds drowned in hype, a deeper, quieter shift was occurring without a single word. The remaining Wilson stock began a quiet retreat, slipping away from the main display floor. One afternoon, that sneaker held the spotlight at the counter for top dollar. By morning, it was exiled to the back, marked down 40%. Eventually, major media had to face it. First Take ran a massive block on the divide. 15 minutes on a show that usually ignores women's hoops. The air felt thick with tension. No one wanted to bash a legend, but the cold stats left no cover. Across the league, peers reacted with nothing but zipped lip icons. No words, just heavy silence as some stars simply vanished from the web. Others posted cryptic quotes about growth. Nothing pointed, just vague. The internet showed zero mercy, flooding every feed with ruthless parodies and roasts. Viral grabs turned to jokes instantly, like a lone shoe listed for pennies. Clips mashed professional design talks against those frantic, heated rants. The verdict was cold. One side was crafting a legacy. The other was stuck defending, and once the web picks a villain, it stays. Let's be clear. This isn't a celebration of a fall. That's not the goal. This is about what happens when skill meets an ego that's taken control. It's watching a winner blame bad luck instead of better competition. It's seeing the gap between those who build empires and those who burn them. Wilson had it all. 2 MVP trophies and a championship ring. A decade of dominance and a resume that should have been bulletproof. But instead of cementing her status, that energy was wasted on friction. She picked a fight nobody asked for. Clark never even said her name. Not once in any interview. She was too busy putting in work. That quiet focus spoke way louder than any verbal clapback ever could. It beat any rant, but the biggest boardroom shift was still coming. Picture this. Crack of dawn, before the world screams and phones start buzzing. An empty gym, maybe some local high school court. The place doesn't matter. The stillness and dawn light on hardwood do. I'm standing at center court, weighing everything that just went down. I'm looking past the noise, hunting for the actual lesson in this mess. This was never about trashing a legend. Wilson already made history. Those trophies and gold medals are set in stone. They're real. None of that changes. She can still take over any game. She's a GOAT contender, but this was a trial of character, not skill. It's a study in what happens when doubt steers and comparison kills joy. When you watch someone else's house instead of protecting your own. Truth beats arrogance every time, and not because life is always fair. It isn't, but the public has a radar for what's authentic. People know a real connection from a fake performance, especially now. Clark's spot on New Heights worked because it felt totally genuine. Her talk about design and making kids proud felt like real character. That wasn't a script, it was her actual soul showing through. The defensive rants on the other side failed because the vibe was off. It felt bitter, and once that hits the screen, you can't take it back. You can't unsee that. It's a lesson for Caitlyn and everyone else. Rivals are a fact of life. We all watch competitors snag the prizes we crave. Seeing someone else win can feel like a personal attack, even when it isn't. Your reaction in that heat defines your character far more than the win. It is a human gut check. This drive is primal. Long before screens or logos, we were sizing up whoever stood next to us. Having that fire isn't the problem. It is what you do with the heat that counts. You can use it as high-octane fuel or let it corrode your soul, create or collapse. Your character eventually leaks out. Clark laid it out clearly during that interview. Forget the marketing fluff. She wanted every kid to feel like their wildest dreams were actually tangible, proving that the distance from humble beginnings to greatness isn't a canyon, it is reachable. That was the footprint she intended to leave behind. Not internet beef, just children lacing up, feeling like the court belongs to them too. That is legacy. Beyond the temporary spikes, creating something that survives long after the flashbulbs stop. There is a massive chasm between a viral moment and a lasting mark. I am setting that CC1 right on the hardwood, letting the morning light hit the brand mark. Then I am backing off because the work explains itself. The process is the sermon. It is about deciding what your reputation stands for when the feed stops scrolling and the noise dies. When the dust settles, only your foundation remains. Build something sturdy enough to carry you. While everyone else is busy throwing stones, I am breaking down the blueprint. Forget the PR spin. This is the raw truth of how one shoe deal flipped the script. Let us be real. 2 top-tier players, 2 deals, and the exact same window. One put in 18 months of grit, grinding with designers, testing, failing, and starting over. She crafted a legacy that stands tall long after the final whistle blows. The other let the opportunity bleed out, trading strategy for social media outbursts and instant reactions. One sold out instantly, the other hit the discount rack. The culture voted with their wallets. Now ask yourself, forget the noise, be honest. What do you actually respect? Constructing your own empire or obsessing over someone else's success? It is a recurring pattern. This isn't just sports, it is the office or the inner circle, the battle for relevance. If this gives you pause the next time you are feeling competitive, then I have hit the target. If you are still here, you know this rabbit hole goes much deeper. There is a hidden component that nobody is mentioning yet. Specifics hidden deep in the fine print. Things corporations are prioritizing right now. A safety switch meant to stop public meltdowns. A clause rewriting the future of endorsements. That is the next chapter. But here is where this part concludes. Not with a viral post or a shallow take meant to farm likes. It finishes with a choice. Do you build your own house or watch someone else do it? This story was never about footwear. It was about patience and the marathon mindset. One side kept their head down and laid bricks. The other tried to shout down the clock. History is a harsh judge. It only remembers the builders. The spotlight is fickle. Trends evaporate. Feeds refresh. But the craftsmanship and the name remain. People forget this in the comment sections. Clark didn't win because of a better PR team. She won because she treated her craft as something sacred, something far bigger than her own ego. The world felt that authenticity, even if they could not put a finger on it. That is the real takeaway. Discipline, control, and knowing when to work quietly. If you are watching, you already get that. You are not looking for cheap opinions. You want the truth. You're hunting for those shadow-shrouded secrets, the paper trails, the whispered power plays, and the raw truths buried deep before they finally erupt. That's where Courtside Leaks steps in. For authentic analysis and the full picture before the hype machine takes over, don't go anywhere. Join us and activate alerts. This clash over footwear was merely a prelude, a definitive blast across the bow. The following chapter is already unfolding. Expect total access to every secret and each clandestine pivot the league tries to keep off camera. Smash like, join our ranks, leave your thoughts, and pass this along. Stay grounded with Courtside Leaks, the definitive sanctuary for the cold reality beneath those professional basketball headlines.